Welcome to the Linen Service podcast. I'm Makai McDermott, creator, historian, and founder of this amazing space for women who want more from their lives and careers. And today I am so excited to be joined by the senior fashion features editor at The Face magazine, Eni Subair. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. I've been wanting to speak to you for so long. I've been saying this to every guest, but I have been dying to speak to you because I've been watching you grow throughout your career in journalism, and it's been so nice to see someone who has an affinity for fashion and writing and investigating get to where you are.
Thank you. That's so nice to hear. It all feels very much like sort of like a whirlwind, but also like I've been doing it forever. Mm-hmm. It's a strange world.
Okay, I love that. You've had quite a colourful career, I think. You've worked at British Vogue, Elle, Vogue Global Network, and then obviously most recently The Face. Can you talk to me about what that journey's been like and what you learned at each stage? Because I find that people's learnings are also vastly different.
Well, I'll start with Elle just because that was my first sort of taste of journalism, fashion journalism actually, because up until then all the internships that I'd kind of done were more just features and general things. But Elle, like I said, was my first sort of taste in fashion. And I started off in the fashion cupboard, actually. I was not writing at all. I was in the fashion cupboard. I remember, I don't know if do you want me to go through sort of how I got the internship?
Yeah. We want to know.
Okay. Well, I basically just kind of had a list of all these publications I wanted to work with, and Elle was on there. And I remember just kind of in between retail jobs when I just had some time off, or even just during my lunch break, like literally trying to find a contact for Elle. Mm-hmm. And I remember emailing any person I could find, any contact I could find, and just saying I really want to do an internship. And then I just randomly got an email one day. Mm-hmm. So I was like, great, this is it. Like, I'm gonna make it.
Yeah.
And then
this is your Devil Wears Prada
exactly.
moment. Yeah.
And then I was working in the fashion cupboard, which I'd never done before. And so it was just basically packaging up samples, unboxing samples, helping fashion editors with shoots that they had going on, that sort of various thing. And it was a 4-week long stint where I was just, very much just learning about the clothing, which was great because up until then you don't really come into contact with clothing that's like on the runway, like high fashion pieces.
I was just about to ask you what types of clothes were in the fashion cupboard.
Yeah, so it was very much like luxury pieces that were fresh off the runway that were required for shoots. So it was like really cool to see those pieces up close, to touch them and be in close proximity to it. But I didn't do any writing. And like the entire time I was like, I'd walk past the features desk, I'd walk past the fashion features director, Kenya Hunt. That's what her role was at the time. And I just remember being like, I would love to like contribute some way, somehow. And I remember the beauty director at the time, Jolie, just happened to kind of overhear me talking about a trip to New York in which I was looking for some makeup bits. And I was talking about how there just isn't that much variety for dark-skinned women in terms of makeup in the UK. And just America was just leagues ahead of us. Like they had so much more stuff. And I was just felt really passionate about it. And she overheard me and was like, can you write something about that? And I was like,
I love that.
I was like, oh, sure. I was like, really, I was really, really reserved, really, really quiet. And I genuinely didn't think anyone was like, anybody but the other interns were like listening in. So she asked me to do it. And I remember I wrote that piece. I sent it to her. I think it must have been maybe my last week. I sent it to her. And then, didn't think anything else of it, went back to kind of retail. And then a few weeks later, I got an email from Kenya and she was like, I read your piece about beauty and I'd love you to come back and do an internship again. So I went back. This was like over the Christmas period. I did my internship and she was just like, we've got a year-long role for a fashion features assistant. I think you should go for it. And I was like, sure, I'd be happy to go for it. But she's like, I'm not going to tell you when your interview is. I just want you to be prepared. But it could be at any point. And like, so
oh my God.
I know. So every day I'd come in and be like, is it today? Is it today? But it was like good for me to sort of brush up on my know-how and like kind of do some research and just really ask more questions. And like, I remember Donna Wallace, an incredible stylist who was a fashion editor at the time as well. And I remember speaking to her and asking her so much about the magazine and her experience, because I just wanted to soak up everything I could ahead of my interview. And also I really admired her, but I'd just been too scared to speak to her up until that point. And so it's sort of like the push I needed to interact with people more and just, you know, do some more research. And so I had my interview, and then literally over the Christmas period and going into New Year's, I didn't hear anything, and then I got the role.
Amazing.
And I literally remember, like, I was on my way to my retail job. I was on the bus and I just checked my inbox and I had the contract there, and I was like, oh my God. I remember, like, I think I still have it.
Went home.
I know. I think I still have that email, and I remember like texting my sisters, texting my family, and telling them, because I was just like, oh my, I couldn't believe it.
That's so sweet.
So yeah, it was honestly, like, I have Kenya to thank for literally that start in my career. And it was like working under a Black editor, someone who I just admire so much, and Donna as well, who I then got to work with when I was doing my year-long role, who were just so incredibly inspiring and nurturing. And it is such a rarity, I think, to work in fashion and have your first role be under 2 Black women as well. And so I really, really treasured that time. And it was, a year of me, you know, working with the fashion editors. It wasn't purely writing. I would sometimes help with like call-ins and doing like pages in the magazine, as well as like writing some bits of copy for the site. But it was a real introduction into fashion and the industry at a level that I'd never experienced before. And so it was amazing. And it really made me feel like, if this is what fashion is like, I want to work in fashion for the rest of my life. Okay,
so this instance was what really said it clicked the switch for you. This was, definitely. I love fashion. This is what I love doing.
Yeah.
How important do you think was making a good impression in your first internship for all the subsequent events?
I definitely think it was part of it, because I think even the first time around, before I'd written that beauty piece and I was at Elle and just in the fashion cupboard, I made sure to come in every single day with a look, because I was like, I want to be memorable. The night before I'd pick up my look, I would make sure it was something
laid out all on the bed.
Yeah. I would make sure it was something that would help me stand out, but still felt like me and it was like personal to my style. I remember like one of the editorial meetings, like the interns were always required to sort of be in the meetings and just listen in, and it was like valuable to hear like the ideas that people are kind of floating around. And I remember the editor-in-chief at the time being like, I really like your outfit. And I was like, I was so happy inside.
Yeah,
on
that's
the outside,
made my day.
I was like really cool, but inside I was like, oh my God, I can't believe she like noticed me. And it was like maybe my first or second week. So that was definitely something that made me stand out, I think. And I think generally like speaking to people obviously definitely made an impression, and just trying to ask, being inquisitive and curious about where you're working, asking people for advice, asking people what it's like working at there. I don't think people would take offense to it. You know, people like to speak about their experiences and for the most part want to help. So I think just being really inquisitive helped as well.
Yeah, I love that you picked up on that curiosity, because when I was speaking to Bianca about a lot of her work, she said it is inspired by her desire to know more and to always investigate. And I think her work, as I said on our podcast, is a constant ask for more when it comes to traditional menswear. So it's really nice to hear that even across industries, like you work in the same industry but doing different roles, that curiosity is what will set you apart from other people if you are thinking of being a writer. When you were doing all of these different things, you said you did a bit of writing, you were in the fashion cupboard.
Yeah.
Which experience resonated most with you, and which was the one that was like, oh, actually, I think writing is where I really belong, like not styling or taking images or anything else?
Do you know what? I think it was probably after Elle, because at that point when I'd finished doing the year-long fashion features assistant role, I knew writing was definitely something I wanted to explore further. But then I was like, oh, I actually enjoy styling, and like going on set and kind of shadowing the editors and seeing how these shoots get put together was really interesting. So I was like, is that maybe something I want to explore? But I wasn't quite sure. And then I think just kind of on the side, working with photographers, doing freelance shoots, assisting other editors kind of made me realize that like, I love fashion. I love seeing it being brought to life. I don't know if I'm necessarily the right person to do that, but it took me kind of assisting numerous editors and numerous people to kind of figure that out on my own. And I think had I not done that, I think I would have kind of maybe gone full force and been like, yeah, I want to be a stylist and I want to be a writer. And then it would have maybe kind of been something that I would have realized wasn't for me kind of later down the line. So I think definitely just assisting whenever I had the time, along with like pitching and stuff, of course, definitely helped me realize that.
Okay. How do you think that others who want to assist or find out if they like styling, is that the thing for them? What's the best way for them to go about it? I
think definitely, first of all, definitely have the stylist that you want to assist in mind. I think study their work inside and out, know what they're into, what their references are, what they're inspired by, what their shoots look like, who they like to work with, that type of thing. I think don't just kind of like do a cold call and kind of send a blanket email to everybody. I think you have to tailor it to whoever you want to work with and know their work inside out and actually really study them. Because I think sometimes you might find a stylist and be like, oh yeah, they're really great, but like you realize that maybe the way of styling isn't quite for you. And like I think that definitely will come across in your enthusiasm and the way that you work with them. And I think it's just a waste of your time and of their time as well. So I would definitely say sort of like have a list of people you want to work with and email them. I know obviously like there's some people that you might think they're never going to work with me or I'm never going to get to assist them. But I hear so many times from assistants, like everyone is so busy. If you email them the first time and they don't respond, it's not because they don't want to work with you necessarily. It's just because they're busy. So,
they're
obviously
like a one-man band.
Absolutely. So obviously just kind of have some discernment in terms of how often you're emailing them and like following up, but definitely do it. Like if they say no, you're in the same position you're in now, just kind of go on and maybe it'll work at a later time. It doesn't mean it's a no forever. So I definitely think that, I think while you're also wanting to work with these incredible and aspirational stylists, don't forget that you can actually work with your peers as well. And you can have like a community around you that you work with and exchange creative ideas with and still do shoots with, and you can submit them to, there's so many magazines, independent ones, that you can submit your work to as well, and that also will help build up your portfolio. So I'd definitely say that, and I think also there are so many mentoring schemes and just people generally that I think are open to mentoring. And so I think if perhaps you feel like you're still kind of experimenting with what your style is as a stylist and you're still working with the community, but you're not sure if you're ready to take that jump to do a shoot, or maybe like you're still kind of a bit nervous about assisting, I definitely think that you can reach out to people and just inquire about, look, I'm wanting to be a stylist. I'm not quite sure where to start. Can we go for a coffee? And I know that can be really intimidating and you think, oh my gosh, this person's never going to go for a coffee with me. But again, it's something that I did with a lot of people that I admired in terms of writing, or I just reach out and say, I really love what you do. I'd love to work together at some point, and sort of leave it at that. But I think there's no harm in asking for a coffee as well.
That's so true. And I think you're touching on so many different attributes, which is like having that curiosity, but also being willing to put yourself out there, exposing yourself to the possibility of a no. I always say, like, if you never ask the question, it's a guaranteed no. So you might as well ask. There's a 50% chance they'll say yes. And I think in going through all of those things and recognizing that these are the qualities you need, I find that sometimes people think writing is like, oh, I have this idea, then you just put pen to paper and it's like so romantic. But there is a lot of tenacity that you need to be a writer, to be a stylist, to get into the fashion industry. Can you speak a little bit more to the tenacity that you need? Because Twiggy also mentioned that you've got to be willing to put in some work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes people just think like ideas fall out of the sky and then like the story is just there, but it's so much more than that. Like I think especially when it's an idea that you're like you really love, you have to kind of be willing to kind of follow it through. And sometimes it's easier with some stories where you're just speaking to maybe one person and it's a straightforward interview and it's kind of like minimal kind of follow-ups and that sort of thing. But sometimes with a story where it's multiple people, sort of like the mothers in fashion and what it's really like, that was sort of like a months-long process because you're speaking to several different people. You're kind of having follow-up conversations because they might mention something and you've kind of got to go back and investigate and ask more questions. And, it's also coordinating people's schedules as well. It's not easy. And I think as well with a story like that, you also want to make sure that you're kind of being very sensitive to people, because obviously like, motherhood in general is, something that is important to talk about. And in fashion as well, it's not well, at least, you know, some of the women that I spoke to kind of very much said the same thing, in that it's not spoken about a lot. So when it comes to a topic like that, you want to take care and you want to handle it sensitively. And so that requires, like, you know, speaking to people, giving them adequate time to speak to you, really like following up with questions and being inquisitive, and just making sure that you're handling their answers like in a way that shows that you care. You know?
And I really love that piece, for mothers and what it's really like working in the creative industry, because I don't see a lot of visibility of women who embrace that. But I don't know if it's because it's the culture of fashion that it's like everyone just has to be working, like it's not the most like work-life balance type of job. But I really enjoyed reading the stories of these women that were artists or creative directors, speaking about, well, having a child is a beautiful thing, but you also, when you're freelance, you feel that pressure to go back into work. And it was such a interesting perspective that a lot of people went through that just wasn't brought to the forefront. So I really appreciated reading that article. And I think it gave me insight into your work as a journalist and like the things you care about and the care that you took writing that story. So really loved that.
Thank you.
And I think it's so interesting that in fashion journalism, you get to speak about new and upcoming designers, but then you also get to touch on women working in the creative industry. And did you know that you were going to be able to have so much variety in what you wrote about?
Really, I really didn't, because I think it was honestly while I was working, I think as well at Vogue Global Network and also at British Vogue, that kind of I began to explore what I'm into a little bit more. And so I worked under Holly Shackleton, who is an incredible editor, and also Hattie Collins as well, both incredible editors, and just really helped nurture me and helped me grow as a writer. But I think it was the freedom that, you know, Holly gave me that really allowed me to sort of think about what it is that I'm into, because I think I'd always just been like fashion. I can't really veer outside of that. And I remember like one of the first pieces that kind of gave me the opportunity to do that was in conversation I did with Issa Rae and Michaela Cole, just as I May Destroy You was about to come out. And I hadn't really interviewed many actors before that period of time. And it was just something that I was like, well, Insecure is the new season's coming up and Michaela's got her new show, and there's so many similarities between these two women. Like, it feels like a natural conversation that should happen. And I remember pitching it to Holly and thinking, oh, she's probably not going to go for it, or like, even if she is, it's probably not going to happen because they're so busy. And it was also during the pandemic. So that ended up going ahead, and when both of them said yes, I was like, oh, so I actually have to do it now. And that ended up being a conversation that was just honestly to this day, something I really hold dear to me, and a conversation that was so important. And I think really inspiring, especially for that time where we're all inside the house and there were just so many gems. And I think that then gave me the confidence to kind of explore more and do more things like that, and just kind of like, just essentially kind of not limit myself in terms of what I'm interested in. And then, I think, beyond that as well, sort of like working at British Vogue, I definitely did a lot of fashion interviews. But I think, again, when you're working with a publication like that as well, it's always kind of like you want to write about something in the most interesting, refreshing and dynamic way. And I think that also pushed me to kind of explore and not just kind of do, you know, a simple interview with this person, and kind of like challenge myself a bit more and kind of think about ways that I can speak to this person, or even the questions that I can put forward to this person that nobody's kind of asked before, and just kind of not do the bare minimum or anything like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Your storytelling seemed to have really developed on this journey of figuring out what you like to speak about, and what you like to write about, on interviewing actors, on thinking more deeply about what was important to you. How exactly did your storytelling develop, and where do you think it is now?
Oh, that is an interesting question. As I said, I think definitely like working with like such skilled editors like Holly, Hattie, Kenya definitely helped me in my journey. And like Kenya, even when I'd left Elle, was still a mentor to me and was still available and like would speak to me. And like if I was stuck on something, same goes for Holly as well, and Hattie. I think honestly, just becoming more, I'm definitely not 100% there right now, but just more confident in I guess what I bring and what my where my interests lie, not being afraid to kind of hone in on that. So like, you know, I remember there was a period where like, and I still do kind of, I'm interested in ideas around that, but specifically like mental health and kind of feeling like the pressure to compete with your peers, especially on social media, and feeling like you have to show that you're doing this and this and this. And if you're not, then you're a failure, you know? And I remember like having an idea around that and being like, I want to talk about this, but feeling really nervous too and apprehensive, because I just kind of felt like, well, what will people think of me? And if I'm talking about mental health, you know, what are people going to be like, well, why are you doing that? Your remit is fashion, you know? And I think becoming more confident in actually talking about topics that affect everyone and not being so afraid to kind of be like, well, I'm somebody who does feel these things. You know, I'm somebody who has thought about like and compared myself to other people the same way anyone else has. And just kind of being like, well, these are topics I talk about with my friends, so why can't I write about them? So I think definitely a combination of being more self-assured in terms of like my writing, and also kind of trying to be trying to care less about what kind of people think in terms of, does it matter if I don't write about fashion 24/7?
That makes sense. And for an aspiring writer who's looking to develop their tone of voice and the things they care about, is there an aspect of being more vulnerable then and sharing things that you may only speak to with your friends, but you speak about with your friends, you know?
I think it's for me, it was part of my journey. I think because growing up, I was very, very reserved. Like I was very, very quiet. I didn't really, outside of like my friends and my family, I didn't really speak about anything that was going on with me. And I think it literally wasn't until maybe like, again, 4 years ago, after everything is falling around the pandemic. Like maybe there's a commonality here.
It was a really transformative time for a lot of people.
It really was. But I think that was the first time I wrote about something like, I'd written about mental health. I'd written about sort of like comparing yourself, but it was the first time I think I kind of delved a little deeper and wrote about like me as a person and my personal life, which was around the time that my dad passed away, and I'd never written about that before, and it was really, and it wasn't even an article, it was literally just on Instagram, and I just kind of felt this weight lift off of me, because I felt like there were so many other people who could understand and appreciate what I was going through. And then I ended up actually writing a longer piece for Elle, because I was there at the time in print, and it was really, really scary because it was something, like I said, never spoken about before, and it felt really exposing and raw to speak about that journey. But also it was about how I'd never traveled alone and spent a week by myself, and my dad passing away was sort of the reason why I decided to do that, because I just kind of felt like I needed a break and I needed to be alone. And I'd been terrified up until that point to do it. And I'd written about it and just kind of like how it allowed me to process that grief being alone. And so I hope this answers your questions. I feel like I'm going around in circles.
No, you're not.
But I kind of feel like for me, it was actually delving into the personal and speaking about my life that kind of helped me figure out my tone of voice, what resonates with me and what feels the most authentic. Because I think when you do write about things that don't necessarily feel like a fit for you, people can tell when they're reading it, or when you're talking about it, that it's not resonating with you, or it doesn't resonate with them either. So I hope that sort of answers the question.
So writing has been for you quite a cathartic experience.
Absolutely.
As well. And it's a way that other people who are embarking on this journey of writing, they can use that to perhaps connect closer to what it is they're writing and what the end product will be. So that makes complete sense. So connected to this then is actually about your process when you're identifying stories, because now you're in an editor role. So I'm going to actually do a slight sidestep here and say, how did your editor role come about and how was it stepping into that?
I think so my first editor role came from Elle, and it was definitely a transformation. I think it was definitely like it helped me grow up. Basically,
I was just gonna say it feels like a grown role.
100%. It was, at times I'd be thinking, you know that meme where it's like I accidentally became important at work. That is how I felt sometimes. And that's because I was like, oh
my God, you're asking me what to do?
I'm like, I don't know. But no, I think, and I think it's so fine to sometimes say you don't know the answer. But I think as an editor, it was more of an opportunity to edit other people's work. I think it gave me the opportunity to read other editors' work more, not necessarily the ones that write for the publication, but just externally. I would always read anyway and just like read other sites. But it was just like interesting to kind of identify the various styles of like how people write and what I actually liked and how I'd incorporate that into my style of editing as well. I think it definitely forced me to sort of be more kind of front facing, kind of not be afraid to put forward like bigger, bolder ideas as well, and to kind of see them through from the beginning to the end. Like one of my favorite stories that I did actually when I was at Elle involved Bianca, Saul, and some, so many other incredible designers that I really, really admire that, you know, are part of London Fashion Week, and just really amazing emerging designers and established designers. And it was all about their families and those that support them, those that are part of their circles.
I love this. And Bianca did the shoot with all her sisters.
Yeah,
I loved it. I remember this.
And while I didn't do all of the interviews, like it was just sort of my responsibility to kind of, you know, seize control of that and kind of like keep that going and ticking along from the beginning to the end. And it was really lovely to kind of speak to all of those designers as well, interview them, you know, be on set. And that was something that like I probably wouldn't have had the confidence to do if I wasn't an editor. And also just maybe not have had the time really to do it actually if I wasn't an editor. But that was like something that kind of something that I love doing, and definitely something different. Sorry, I feel like I'm rambling. Something different.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think then is the difference? Or I think a better question would be, if someone is a writer, they have like 2-3 years experience under their belt and they are looking to grow into an editor position, what would you tell them? Like, these are the things you must show that you're able to do.
Yeah, I think definitely, and I'm by no means brilliant at doing all of these. I'm still kind of mastering it all. But I would say being able to kind of juggle your time adequately, which can be really hard. I think especially when you're kind of maybe like editing copy, you're commissioning things, you are overseeing maybe a shoot, or you're kind of doing just kind of, I guess it depends on the business that you're working for. But if you're kind of overseeing other bits, it's sometimes hard to kind of determine which thing needs your time or needs your attention the most. So I think sort of like the ability to be able to sort of juggle, delegate as well, not be afraid to ask for help. Like I think I've learned so much. I'm somebody who I don't like to necessarily ask for help.
Yeah, same.
And it's really, really difficult for me to be like, hey, I need your help with this, because I want to be able to do it myself.
Yeah.
And sometimes it physically just is not possible. And so I think being able to ask for help and lean on your colleagues and say, hey, actually, I'm doing this. Are you able to look over this? Or can you help with this? Or what do you think about this? And float ideas past people. There's nothing wrong with that. I think also... I
was going to say that I think people's idea of leadership is often that a solo journey. They always think like, oh, leaders are supposed to be so far removed from everyone. But everyone who is in a leadership role or a managerial role, they all say the same thing, that you do have to lean on your colleagues. You do have to learn to be really collaborative and ask for help. And I think that's a really good differentiation of like what a leader really is versus what people think it is, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because I definitely always grew up thinking like, oh, if you're the boss, like you're like in this glass house and nobody can touch you or talk to you. And in reality, all the people I meet that are leading really great teams, like yourself or Bianca or Casey, and they've all been people who are extremely open, really easy to talk to, and they foster that trust in their team. So I definitely think, well, I can't say for writers, but if you, you know, if you want to be a leader in anything, you do have to have those elements to your personality as well, don't you? You spoke about your doing the story with Bianca and Saul, and speaking about emerging designers. Are there any like designers or artists or creatives that you really love or that have significantly shaped your perspective on fashion and culture?
I think definitely loving, for sure, Nadine Moss, who I came across probably during the pandemic. She is an Egyptian designer, London-based, absolutely incredible. She creates dresses that literally shape and like literally enhance the body. Like you look incredible. It's all about celebrating women and femininity. And I discovered her, as I said, during the pandemic, because she had this like mermaid overlocked dress that was sort of like this iridescent sheen to it. And
it sounds amazing.
It was incredible. And I saw it and I remember being like, I need that dress. I need that dress immediately. And from that point onwards, I remember like just kind of spotlighting her a little bit while I was at Vogue as well. And then from then we just like developed a friendship. I went to her studio and I remember trying on some pieces and just being like, I love everything. And like the amazing thing about Nadine as well is she's so warm, so giving, so lovely, but she also really rallies her community around her and her friends, and she involves them in what she's doing, whether that's like a campaign or a shoot or just generally interacting with them and wanting people to come to her studio. And it's so nice to come across a designer who's so open and just welcoming and just wants to grow and you know, like I said, isn't afraid of like meeting her community. And like I ended up actually being in one of her campaigns last year, just because she was like, I want my community in it, and she only works with her community and her close-knit friends, which I think is amazing. And you know, it shows as well in the level of people that wear her stuff, you know, like from Taylor Russell to like Alva Claire, like her stuff is amazing. So I deeply admire her. And I also love Tolu Coco as well, who is Nigerian like me, and it's just nice to see a designer like that really getting, you know, a well-deserved spotlight, and just seeing her blossom, you know, from Tyler wearing her stuff, you know, and just seeing her do really, really well and be an LVMH prize finalist as well. Like, it's incredible to see. And just, I think she's so hardworking. And, you know, I met her a few years ago as well. And it's just great seeing her go from strength to strength and showcase her collections at London Fashion Week.
Yeah, amazing.
She's great.
I think you're in such a great position to witness a lot of designers that started out as underground, and seeing their journey, seeing them win awards and get accolades, and also develop their design language. And I suppose you have that perspective because you get to go to a lot of fashion weeks and you get to see it all. Do you have a favorite city for Fashion Week?
Oh, do you know what? I have to say it is probably Paris.
Really?
It is.
I mean, I'm not surprised.
I do associate Paris now purely with work because of how much I go there for work.
Okay.
But I do think, like, you know, and I have had a love-hate relationship in that, because it can be such a go sort of scenario, and it is like that in London, but I guess it's different because it feels London is a lot shorter, whereas Paris can be like between 8 and like 10-11 days, so it can feel quite non-stop. So at first it was quite an adjustment getting used to like doing that and going to like 4, 5, 6 shows a day, and then you've kind of got an after party, or you've got a dinner, or you've got this, or you've got that. But I've come to really appreciate it, and I feel like there's so many incredible creatives. You see such amazing style, just like not necessarily even people there for Fashion Week, just people living their lives, going about their daily lives. But I do feel like the shows that I've witnessed are just incredible in Paris. Like, you know, I think seeing the big players there, kind of, it's unlike anything. Like, you know, there's nothing like it, I think.
That's so cool. Was there a show last season that particularly stood out to you?
Ooh, I get asked this all the time, and I'm always like, I feel like it changes so much. I'm trying to think.
That's good though that it changes. Yeah.
I think, let me try and think. Who did I enjoy last season? I think Vicara is always a great show to catch. Like, it's always typically on like the first day of Paris Fashion Week. I'm obsessed with Vicara. For years, I've wanted one of their sort of, they've got these, essentially they kind of make all kinds of things. Do you know what? Let me stop answering again, because I'm like, that's very vague. I remember seeing one of their bonnets like a few years ago, and it came with like a matching like fuchsia pink dress, and I've been obsessed with them ever since. It's just fun. And
could you start from Vicara is your favorite?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Vicara was one of my favorite shows this season. I think they had Paloma walk the show as well, which was nice to see. And they just, generally, I love their stuff there. It's just so fun. And they have these like really voluminous dresses that, you know, they'll have bows on them. It's quite like sort of like a nod to 80s style.
Yeah, super playful.
Yeah, super fun. Playful.
Yeah,
fun,
they had a nipple
flirty
t-shirt, which I wanted to get. It was out of stock, and they made the nipples from knotting the t-shirt.
Yes, I tried one of them on actually last year. One of my biggest regrets is not buying it. I tried it on in grey with
that's the colour I wanted.
With like a skirt from them as well that's got like knickers over it, which I bought the skirt,
so cool.
but I didn't buy the top, and I always regret it.
You have to show me the skirt.
I was gonna wear it today, but I was like,
No, okay, you got to show me the script after this
Vicarious
episode.
is one of my favorite shows. Rick Owens always has a really amazing show. I think the craftsmanship is always really innovative, and the beauty as well. Like the models will have literally like black contacts, and it's wild, and like the footwear as well is just like out of this world. So I think a Rick Owens show is always a real kind of a real spectacle. And then also Schiaparelli as well. I went to a Schiaparelli show back in March as well, and I'm just blown away by...
Was that the one when you had Kendall Jenner and all Alex Consani and all the...
It was Gigi. Gigi had opened the show.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Alex did walk as well. And like Doechii and Doechii Cat were like front row. And
this is when Chelsea did the look for Doechii, the makeup.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
And it was just phenomenal. I hadn't been to a Schiaparelli show before. And seeing, it was really, really intimate, really, really small room, which made it better because you really could just see the flow of the clothing just kind of move past you and really take it in. And it was just breathtaking. Like Daniel Roseberry's eye and just way with design is just so fascinating. And I loved it. There was a Western sort of like twist to it as well. It was amazing.
I love that. And I felt that with the denim as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely loved that. You've had such a fun career. You know, we're just now speaking about you in Paris, going to all these beautiful shows, going to dinners. It sounds really intense, super busy. And then, of course, you're going to the other cities as well. Looking back on all of these experiences, like working in the fashion cupboard, working with Elle, working on the Kenya and Donna and Hattie and Holly and all of these really powerful women, what's been the most valuable professional lesson that you've learned from them?
Ooh, okay. Definitely, again, don't be afraid to lean on your close-knit community. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. Nobody is above feedback. Nobody's above feedback or like just wanting, like everybody wants to grow. And I think feedback, if you don't get feedback, in my opinion, I feel like they either don't care enough about your work or they are not paying attention to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because I kind of feel like people give you feedback because they care. And, you know, I'm someone that is very sensitive. And sometimes I would be like, oh, that means it's rubbish. That means it's crap.
Yeah.
You know, it's got this edit, it's got that edit. But no, it's actually to make you better. And like, you function as a team. You know, when you're on an editorial team, everybody puts their weight in and you work together to make it a piece at the end of the day that people read, and it's the best thing that you've put out there because it's a collective thing. And so I think definitely, feedback, I think there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that like you should embrace it. Like I said, I think leaning on your community is so vital. And I think sometimes it really does help if you're stuck for an idea or you're, you know, need help with something or you've got a dilemma. I think sometimes it takes a minute to just take a step back, speak to other people. And that really helps get different perspective. I guess always read. For me, always read as well. Like I think I would always like read something or see something and send it to Kenya constantly, just to be in the loop as well. And you know, I appreciate it when people send things to me as well.
You've got to be a nerd about your craft.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so.
My follow-up was going to be, how does this continue to influence your work today? But it's kind of related to what we said earlier when you said as an editor, you do also still have to ask for help. You still have to collaborate.
Definitely.
So it's like an ongoing thing.
Absolutely.
And at The Face, I can see that you've continued this collaborative effort and energy in your work. What are you hoping to achieve, or what else, I should say, are you hoping to achieve at The Face?
I think...
Oh, maybe don't give it away.
I know, I was going to say there's some people, there's some things I want to... I know, I was like, wait, I can't say that. If somebody steals my idea.
Yeah, keep it a secret. Keep it vague.
Yeah, I mean, I think to be honest, working at The Face is one of the best things that I've ever done. I think, you know, I love the team that I work with. Everyone has such big ideas. Everyone is so innovative. Everyone is so interesting. Everyone is so intelligent. And it's just like, it then forces me to be the same and to think the same way and to think progressively and to think in a really fun and curious way. And so I think, I hate how vague this answer is going to sound, but I think honestly for me, my hope is just to continue doing that and continuously sparking that curiosity and kind of wanting to always ask why and kind of like think of things in a way like, because I always think like, oh, you know, what would my editor say, or like what would this person on my team say, or how would they phrase it? And that's how I try to think, like what feels facey, like what feels like, you know, what makes sense. And I think for me, I just want to continue to explore that like fun, intellectual, cheeky, curious side that I've come to kind of explore a bit more at the Face. And yeah, I mean, hopefully out of it will kind of birth more stories of the same.
Yeah, I love that. And I actually went to the Face exhibition that was on this year. I went with my boyfriend, and I remember going in to the exhibition, and you see all of the covers, like the cyborg ones, the Tomb Raider inspired ones, and you get to see, I suppose it's decades of someone with a great creative vision, but of a magazine that has accurately captured Britishness. It's captured uprisings, marches, things in Brixton in the 80s. It's captured 90s, dubstep and sound system culture. And the Face has sort of been witness to all of these changes that we faced in Britain. So I always think it's a quintessentially British magazine in the sense that it's managed to record this amalgamation of cultures that makes up the UK. And I left the exhibition feeling super inspired, and also like feeling like I should continue to creatively push myself.
Yeah.
So it's just really lovely to hear you say that the people you work with are so intelligent and are always thinking of ways to do more and think further, because I think that's the essence of the Face, isn't
Absolutely,
it?
yeah. And you know, like you said, sort of going off of that, seeing the exhibition for myself, I went twice, and I think, again, like you said, immersing yourself in that world, it sort of takes your breath away, because going around the exhibition, you're just kind of like hit with so many kind of eras of the Face and so many creatives and, you know, these legendary photographers, models and artists that you're just kind of, that you admire, and just kind of seeing them all in one place.
Like I love Naomi's. It was just
absolutely, you know, and it's just like kind of seeing them all in a different light, and, you know, kind of seeing Bjork with her son, seeing Snoop Dogg, you know, you'll see like, you know, Kylie Minogue, you know, kind of in a way that we've never seen before. And just even the new era of the Face with, you know, sort of Adele, and, you know, having like Harry Styles and Taylor Russell, and kind of really just kind of, I think ultimately it just made me feel really, again, not that I wasn't before, but, you know, really inspired, and kind of made me think I wish I was alive when like the Face kind of first started out.
Cool,
but also just kind of being really, really proud to be a part of this team that really, really does push, like, you know, this constant thinking and constant drive to kind of like do something radical and dynamic, and something that's kind of culture shifting.
Yeah, I love that. And outside of work and all the worky things, how do you touch base with yourself when you're not working? How do you get your creative juices back up?
Okay, I think this is something, again, that I'm only really starting to fine tune. I go to the cinema a lot, I have to be honest. I love to go to the cinema. Me and the cinema,
real bad.
Together. That's how we go. So I love to go on a solo cinema day. I think what I have now kind of taken up walking. I walk everywhere, and I think that really clears my head. I'll just put on a podcast, I'll put on some music, whatever it might be, and try and do that. And that really, I think, calms me. I love to bake. I have to try and kind of limit it because all the sweet things, but I love to bake. I just find it really, really fun and easy. So that's definitely something that I do. I try and read, but the thing is, I'll try and kind of like read a lot of kind of like murder mysteries and things like that, things that like are worlds away from what I do, so that it doesn't feel too kind of similar to my everyday.
What's on your reading list right now? Like, what are you reading?
Oh my gosh, please. I literally am like, I literally need to, do you know what? I was thinking, I want to say one, but I'm like, I haven't done enough research to know if I'm going to read it yet. So I'm not going to put it in.
That's so real. I just finished reading Sociopath by Patrice Gagne.
Yeah, I've heard
that
of
was
it.
interesting.
Okay.
So if you're interested to read something that's just totally left field, I would recommend that one.
Okay. Do you know what? I feel like I always tend to kind of ask friends. Like I have so many friends, like my friend Izzy, I think reads quite, she's a voracious reader, and like I'll sometimes message her and be like,
I love that word,
what
voracious reader.
And we'll like ask her, what are you reading at the moment? Or sometimes I just take screenshots if I see people posting, oh, this is what I've recently read and I think XYZ of it, and it seems like something I'd be interested. Even if it's not, I'll just screenshot it and just kind of look into it in my own time.
Keep reading. Okay?
Exactly.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
We've really enjoyed it. This was a great chat. And if you're listening and you're thinking of writing, you're getting into writing, you want to be an editor, you're like, oh my God, Eni, you're doing my dream job. Make sure that you listen hard and take notes. I think she dropped so many gems. If this resonated with you, make sure to share it with all your friends, all your loved ones, everybody who has an ear, send it to them. And we also have captions so they can read, send it to them. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Linen Service podcast, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye.